Hi, now that you've got your Python environment set up, we're going to go through some information about how to build your first program. Now, this first program isn't going to be terribly interesting. All it's going to do is ask you to enter some data and then print it back out. But it gives you an idea of how to navigate your way through the idle system, build Python programs, execute them, test them, and so on. So let's get going. So here's the general format of Python programs. In general, each physical line of your program corresponds to one Python statement. That's pretty similar to what you've done in other programming languages like Java or JavaScript or C++ or C or HTML or whatever else you're familiar with. Blank lines don't matter. Insert them all you want. Python will completely ignore them. Put them in if it helps your human readability. Now here's something that's different between Python and almost every other programming language. Lines have to be indented. Where you type them on the line makes a big difference in Python. Each line has to be indented at the same level as the line above it, unless the line above started a new block of code, like an if statement or a loop of some sort. That's different than in Java or JavaScript or C++. There, it didn't matter how you lined things up. You lined them up according to readability. In Python, it does make a difference. We don't use the curly braces to show the start and end of a block of code. We indent lines to make a block of code. A lot more about that in future weeks. We won't really be doing any block indenting this week. But just beware, you have to start everything in the same column as the column above. So for this week, everything's going to start in column 1. You can do comments in Python, just like you can in other languages. The hashtag symbol or # symbol indicates the start of a comment. You can have an entire line be a comment, or you can stick a comment on the end of a line to describe for yourself what your statement was trying to do. Python ignores them. They're just for human readability. So here's an example of a simple program. We've got a comment at the beginning. We know it's a comment because it starts right here with a #. Notice how every line is indented the same way. They all start in column 1. Blank lines are allowed. If I left them out, if I put more blank lines in, it would make no difference on the program. I can put a comment on a line that has some Python statements on it. And you'll notice when I'm in idle, it will color code things to help me out. It color codes comments in red. So you see this is in red. This first line is in red. It puts most code just in black. It puts constants in green. And it puts reserved words or built-in functions in purple. So you know print is something that's not a variable I created. That's something that Python knows what to do with. So we're going to create a program like this soon, so we won't go over the syntax of what's in it. Just this is what a program looks like in general. So we can use variables in Python. You know from having programmed in other languages, you need to be able to save data in variables. You can name a variable anything you want in Python as long as it starts with a letter or an underscore and doesn't include any special characters that Python would interpret as operators like plus or minus or equals. So you can have something, a name like my_name or X or name1 or age 17. You can have letters and numbers. It just has to start with a letter or an underscore. Unlike in many other languages, you don't have to declare variables to be specific types in Python. In Java, you would say something like int x if you were going to put an integer value in x. In Python, you don't. You just say x equals 15, and it says, oh, 15 was an integer. You must have wanted x to be an int. So that makes Python a little bit simpler than in other languages. Here I've done my name equals, and then I put in a quoted string, so my name is a string variable. Age equals 1,000, and I gave it an integer, so age is an integer variable. Course name equals something in quotes, so course name is a string variable. Underscore underscore x1 equals 42.7, so underscore underscore x1 is a floating point number. Now, underscore underscore x1 is sort of a stupid name for a variable. Use meaningful names. They help you write understandable programs, and you'll make fewer mistakes that way. One of the main topics of this week's lessons is the print function. That's how we're going to get information from our program out to the console so that the human running the program can see what's going on. And the syntax is very simple. Print, parenthesis, a number of items separated by commas, and close the parentheses. Python will print the value of each item, which can either be a constant or a variable or an expression, and it will insert a single blank space to separate items. Each print statement starts on its own brand new line. So, for example, if I did print quote name quote, comma, the variable name, comma 16, this would print out the characters NAME followed by a space, followed by whatever was in the variable name, followed by a space, followed by the number 16. Well, what if we want things to go onto more than one line? I could do line 1 \n, line 2. \n is an escape character like in most other languages that you may have learned that says insert a new line character here. So it'll print line 1, go to a new line immediately below it, print line 2. This one, HEL plus LO, when I use a plus sign in between two strings, it concatenates them together without any spaces, so this will print hello space there. Input function is the corresponding function to the print function, and that's the way you type things in at your keyboard and get them into your program. The syntax is your variable name equals the word input, then in parentheses, whatever you want to use as a prompt. So you may want to have as a prompt, enter your name, or age, or what's the value of X, or something like that. Python prints out the text of the prompt, waits for you to type something in. Until you hit enter, Python sits there and does nothing. Soon as you type enter, whatever you typed before you hit the enter key gets stored in your variable as a string, even if you typed in a number. So if you said enter your age, like the example here, age equals input, quote, enter your current age, quote, it'll wait until you type something in. Suppose you typed in 15 and hit enter. You typed in 15. What goes into the variable age is the character string 15, not the number 15. More on that in future weeks as we learn how to change from one type to another. Now, when we open up our idle program, which I know you've already done because you've already verified your installation, when you open it up, you start out in the Python shell. The Python shell lets you type in Python commands one line at a time. As soon as you type in a line, it gets executed. So it's not like writing a program that might be 20 or 30 lines long. You write the whole program, then you run it all at once. This is line by line it gets executed. It can be very useful to test things out, see how they're working, do some quick things to check to see if what you were thinking of was correct. So here's an example of a session in the Python shell. You get the 3 greater than signs as a prompt. If I do my name equals quote Mr. I, that's going to put the string Mr. I into the variable called my name. It'll come back with the 3 greater than signs. I can do something else. Maybe I'll say age equals 1,000. Then I'll do a print statement. It'll say, or I tell it print my name is age years old. You can see it prints out Mr. I is 1,000 years old, and then prompts me to enter more Python. The output gets interspersed with your statements, and notice how idle made the output blue so you can tell the difference between what the program's giving you and what you're typing in. Now, sometimes we don't want to do our Python line by line. We want to write an entire program and run an entire program and submit an entire program to this course so you can get credit for it. An alternative to executing line by line in the shell is to put all of your statements into one file. Python calls this a module, and then write the entire module. To do this from idle, in the Python shell, click File, New File to start a brand new module. Or click File, Open to open a module that you created in a previous session. Maybe you just want to run it again. Maybe you're still working on the program and you want to make some changes. You type all of your code into the module. You save it with either File Save or File Save As. Then to run the module, once it's saved, you click on Run, Run Module, or you'll probably get used to the shortcut key, function key F5, to run whatever module you're looking at. This will pop you back into the shell and execute the program right in the shell. You'll see the results of your program there. You can go back to the module window after that to make changes, or you can stay in the shell. Now, one of the things that you can do, either from the module or from the shell in idle, is access the complete set of Python documentation, also known as Python docs or PyDocs, for your installation by clicking on F1 or Help Python Docs from any screen that you're in. It pops open a new window with all of the documentation. You want to get used to this because being able to look things up as you have problems is incredibly helpful. It's something that I still do even though I've been programming for a long time. It's something that you're going to need to do. And in fact, on some of the quizzes that you're going to have in this course, I'm going to ask you specific questions that you're only going to be able to get the answer to if you went into the Python documentation. So it's a way for me to force you to get used to navigating the help system, the Python docs. So that's it for the information for this lesson. We're going to go into idle in a second and go through an example of how to put all this together, and that should have you ready to do your first programming assignment. Okay, here we are in the Python shell. You can see that I've got the 3 greater than sign prompts here, so I can type any Python statements here. Let's type something that just says name equals, quote, Mr. I. Okay. Now, it comes back and says I can type in another statement. Maybe I want to print what the value of name is. So I can say print name. Comes back with Mr. I. Suppose I put something like age equals 1,000. Okay, comes back and says up to you. I can print the name and the age. I can print the name and then is age years old. Notice that I can use double quotes or single quotes. I'm going to get exactly the same thing here if I do single quotes. Looks exactly the same. Now, suppose I wanted to do an input right here, and I forgot how to do it. Let's go in and do the help. I can click on Help, Python Docs, or just hit function key F1. Brings me into the help system. This is the documentation for whatever version of Python is released, and I can either do a search or an index or contents. There's lots of things in here. You might find that the Python tutorial is something that's useful for you. The Python language reference is going to be very useful. The Python standard library is going to be very useful. Let's look in built-in functions. There's a bunch of built-in functions. Is there one called input? Yes, there is. I'm going to click on input, and it tells me about it. Oh, variable name equals input something in quotes. That's what I remember. Let's try that. Variable name equals. So let's put school equals input, and then whatever I want to use as the prompt. What school do you go to? Notice how I'm putting a space after the question mark and before the quote ends, so that when I run this, it actually leaves a space, makes it a little bit more readable. It's waiting for me. I don't have the 3 greater than signs, so I can't type in another Python command yet. It's waiting for me to finish the previous one, which is an input. What school do I go to? Hawken. Now if I try and print out school, it's got the value of Hawken. So the shell is a great way to try out some simple little commands, but it's not a real good way to write a complicated program. For that, we want to go to a module. We do File, New File. That opens up a different window that lets me type in a bunch of Python code. That's called a module. And I can save it, edit it again tomorrow, make changes, submit it as part of an assignment, and I can run it to see how it works. Let me type in a several line long program. I'm going to start with a comment here. This file will be called first.py. Put in a blank line, and let's do print what is your name. Then I'll do input. Notice I've already done the prompt, so I don't need much of a prompt, but I forgot the variable name. Name equals input. And I'm just going to put a question mark here. Then I'm going to do, let's say school equals, I'll use input a different way. Input, what is your school? And then I'm going to print hello name from school. Okay, now hopefully it'll ask me for my name, ask me for my school, and print out a statement like, hello Mr. I from Hawken. So let's see what happens. I need to be able to save this so that I can run it. I click on File, either Save or Save As. It'll put me in whatever my default directory is for this installation of Python. So I'm going to happen to save this in my week 1 folder. You can save things wherever you want as long as you remember. And I'm going to call it first. It will append the .py. Notice the title now became first.py, Python program that I called first. So I've now got a file, a text file, that has all of this in it. How do I run it? I click on Run, Run Module, or I just press the function key F5. It goes back to my shell, restarts it, runs the program. Notice it's saying, what is your name? I'll type in Mr. I. What is your school? Hawken. Hello, Mr. I from Hawken. Now, it leaves me in the shell, and any variables that I had set up in the module are still available to me. So if I go print name, I get Mr. I. Now, notice it's Mr. I with the lowercase r, even though up here when we were using the shell before, we had all uppercases. So it's using the one from the program. That's very helpful in debugging our programs. Okay, you know enough now to be dangerous. You know how to get into Python, create modules, save them, use print and input statements, use the help documents. Okay, that's the end of this video. Go take the quiz and then write your first weekly programming assignment. Neither one should take you more than about 10 minutes to do. Good luck, and I'll see you again in week 2.